Hello everyone, Dr. Yonit Arthur here. You are on the Steady Coach, and today we're going to be talking about one of the most difficult things that people with chronic dizziness have to face, and that is the doctor's appointments. Today we're going to be talking about how to handle these appointments in a way that is not going to impede your recovery and is going to help you achieve your goal of feeling better. Now, anyone who has spent any time on any social media site with other people who've dealt with chronic dizziness know that the doctor's appointments can be absolutely terrifying. They're not just scary because you don't feel good, which is its own level of difficulty. They're also scary because in many cases, the doctors have no idea how to talk to you about your symptoms. And in many cases, they don't really know what to do for you. You end up receiving really scary messages from them like, I don't really know what's wrong with you. I don't know if you can get better. You're just gonna have to learn to live with this. Or equally as bad, you know this is all anxiety and it's all in your head. And of course, most medical professionals are not trying to scare you when they say these things, but I think it might be really helpful to learn how to approach these appointments in a more constructive way so that you can get what you need out of them rather than just absorbing some of these messages that, again, what I've seen among my clients can take a really long time to undo during someone's recovery process. I know that you might feel really scared, really abandoned, really alone, really unsure about what happens next. By the end of this video, my hope is that you will feel far more empowered about your ability to get what you need out of your doctor's appointments and then move on. So first, we're going to talk about a few principles I want you to really internalize as you prepare before the appointment. The first and most important, I think, is that it's really important for you to have an open mind about the possibility that some or all of your symptoms are related to stress and other internal factors rather than damage or some other kind of illness in your body. Now, this is exactly why you're going to the doctor's appointment, to find out if there is something that is affecting your system in such a way that it's causing dizziness. But it's important to, again, walk into this appointment no matter what the cause ends up being, knowing that all illness, all symptoms are biopsychosocial, meaning that there are contributions from your biology, from your body, from potential tissue damage, but that even in the most obviously biological conditions, there is always some contribution from your stress levels, from your previous experience with illness, from support around you, and many of the other factors we talk about on this channel. The question you're really trying to answer in the doctor's appointment, and we're going to be talking about this more in a few minutes, is how much of a biological contribution is there to your symptoms, and is that biological factor, if there is one, medically or surgically treatable. However, understanding that there are many people, especially those who watch my channel, who do not have an identifiable biological cause that truly explains their chronic dizziness symptoms, it's important to understand that these other more internal factors that don't have to do with damage to your body are possibly playing a big role, a central role, or the role in your symptoms. And you can learn a lot more about neural circuit dizziness elsewhere on my channel, but essentially neural circuit dizziness is dizziness that is not explained by biological factors. And I know this may sound very surprising to you. You may be saying to yourself, Yonit, I have 27 different horrifying symptoms. I can't even walk. I have tremors. I can't even open my eyes. I have seen these and many, many other incredibly debilitating symptoms that are still not stemming from a biological cause. In fact, some of the most debilitated people that I've seen have had no biological explanation for their symptoms at all, and it was all a nervous system error that was leading to the symptoms. So no matter how debilitated you are, no matter how terrible your symptoms are, know that whatever the doctor is going to tell you may not fully explain your symptoms. The second thing I'd like you to know in your preparation for your appointment is to understand your goal. And this relates exactly to what I was just talking about. Your goal in your doctor's appointment is going to be to rule out biological causes for your symptoms. That's it. It's not necessarily to explain why you have your symptoms. It's to determine if there is an obvious or medically treatable biological cause to your symptoms. This is a little bit against the grain in terms of how we typically think about going to a doctor. You have a symptom, the doctor explains it, possibly prescribes you something, or prescribes you some kind of treatment regimen, and you get better. This is different when it comes to chronic dizziness symptoms. There may indeed be a biological factor that your doctor has to help you treat, but for many of you, there isn't going to be some kind of biological explanation, and so your goal in this appointment is to rule out any kind of major or minor biological issue that is leading to symptoms or making them worse. The third thing to understand as you prepare for your appointment is to understand the limitations and strengths of your physician. Physicians excel in and are incredibly highly trained in a biomedical approach to symptoms. That means that your doctor likely has incredible expertise in finding biological explanations, such as tissue damage, such as illness, such as disease, that explain symptoms. However, it is quite likely that your doctor has very little training in how to help people whose symptoms are not from a biological cause. When someone's symptoms are being caused by a nervous system malfunction, in other words, a software problem, not a hardware problem, often doctors don't have the training to address those things properly. And this is not in any way downplaying the extremely important role a physician has in your diagnosis and recovery, but understand the role. Understand that the doctor's role is to make sure that there's nothing physically wrong that needs to be addressed in order for you to recover. Okay, so the day of the appointment has arrived, and when you first sit down with your doctor, if you are already educated in the biopsychosocial model of disease, which we talked about in the previous section of this video, then it is an excellent idea to gently bring up this topic before your doctor starts talking to you, and to say something to the effect of, "Hey doc, I'm having really debilitating symptoms right now. I have very high levels of fear and anxiety. I know this is a tough conversation for both of us. Please know that the way that you portray my test results, your findings to me, is going to have an impact on my ability to handle this and to recover." You can even tell your doctor that you know about the biopsychosocial model of disease, and you're here to understand the relative contribution of those three factors in the symptoms that you're having. And so it's very important to you that the doctor understand the impact that his or her words may have on your ability to absorb the information and take steps to resolve your symptoms. I know this is a very, very uncomfortable conversation to have. I know many of us are conflict avoidant and have a reverent relationship with medical providers. But if you set the tone of the conversation this way, and you demonstrate to your doctor that you're ready to take some responsibility for your healing, I think most doctors are going to respond to that relatively positively. Regardless of whether you find it within your ability to do that, the second thing I'd like you to consider doing is to remind yourself that you're not there to be fixed. If you have chronic dizziness symptoms, most people who have them aren't going to get a pure biological diagnosis that's going to explain them. And especially if you get medical clearance at this appointment or at some appointment in the future, the doctor's not going to have many tools to offer you because the cause of your chronic dizziness symptoms is not necessarily biological. And again, Not saying it's psychological. In fact, I have a whole video on why they're not psychological that you can view in the video description. But again, if it's not a hardware issue, your doctor is going to have very limited tools to help you get better. So keep in mind that you're not here to be fixed. You're here to get medical clearance. And along those lines, number 3, you can explicitly ask your doctor for medical clearance by saying something like the following. In your opinion, is there a biological, tissue damage, or physical disease explanation for my chronic dizziness symptoms? Is there something medically treatable or surgically treatable that explains my chronic dizziness symptoms? From your perspective, is there anything further that needs to be done from a medical or surgical perspective to help me feel better? Ask that explicitly. And that leads me directly to number 4, which is, if you feel relatively comfortable with your physician, if your physician seems to be paying attention to you as a whole person, and seems to be willing to be somewhat open-minded, you can explicitly ask, in your opinion, would it be reasonable for me to consider the role that stress and or anxiety are playing in my chronic symptoms? Most doctors will be open to this kind of question. Most doctors are willing to acknowledge the role that stress plays. And indeed, some of them may even be relieved that you mention this because it gives them the freedom to say, yes, this is outside of the scope of what I can help you with, but yes, stress and anxiety are playing a role. And no matter what you get as an answer from that, that doesn't mean that the doctor's wrong or right, but it can be really helpful to hear this directly from your physician. And finally, number 5, be empowered to decline or question further testing. When your doctor recommends further testing, ask, please explain to me how this testing and its results will change your recommendations for me. If the answer is, this won't change my recommendations, we're just crossing the T's and dotting the I's, then you should feel empowered to say, I decline. If the doctor says, you know, there really is still a little bit of a risk here that there's something else going on and I want to take a further look, then that gives you much better reason than just crossing T's and dotting I's to actually get that testing done. Okay, so now let's talk about after the appointment. If further testing was recommended, I highly recommend you go to an objective source to learn more about the test. And a good objective source would be an organization like the Vestibular Disorders Association, vestibular.org, not Facebook groups, not Googling, not hearing about other people's terrible experiences. So for those of you dealing with high levels of stress and anxiety, please do not over-research these tests. Please do not go home and Google. That is going to lead you to further distress. It's not going to empower you to go into the appointment well-informed. So visit the Vestibular Disorders Association and then get off the computer. And the second thing you should do right then is make sure that you have sources of support, joy, and connection. Not just, I want you to make a special effort to find even the smallest sources of joy and connection in your life, whether that's with a pet, whether that's just sitting outside, whether that's listening to music. And I know just how uncomfortable you may feel right now, and I know your options for joy may be very, very, very limited, but I want you to try to find some way of caring for yourself in a special way after going through one of these appointments. And it also might help to rewatch this video and look through the first half in which I remind you what your goal is, what doctors are and aren't going to be able to tell you, and how to prepare for the appointment. This will help reassure you that you have indeed achieved your goal, which in most cases, for most of you, is going to be medical clearance, rather than the goal that people think they have going into these appointments, which is that the doctor is going to fix them. With these expectations that we learned about today, I think that you'll find the appointments far less scary, far less terrifying, and they will do far less damage to your mental health and well-being and your ability to recover. I hope this was helpful for you guys. Again, this is a very special topic to me, something I feel very passionately about. I know that you have in many cases been through the ringer with these appointments and you've found them incredibly unhelpful. But I'm hoping that by arming people with this information now, we can slowly start to change what these appointments are like for people with chronic dizziness. Thank you for tuning in, and if you enjoyed this video or you found it helpful, please like, please share, and I would appreciate it if you would subscribe to my channel. It helps expand my reach to more people. Take care, everyone. Talk soon. Bye-bye.